Hello, welcome my loves to Blow Up, where we dive into the craziest, most unhinged stories from Reddit. Today we've got 6 wild tales of stalkers entitled Karens and trespassers who pushed all the wrong buttons. Are these Redditors in the right, or did they go too far? Grab a snack, smash that like button, and let's get into the madness. I was very publicly verbally battered for sex by a mentally unwell Forever Alone for 5 years. As recently as a few months ago, I have begged him to stop, sent him a cease and desist, had to send a cease and desist to multiple third parties, and he's refused to stop at every turn. Because he has this false sense of entitlement to harass, slander, and bully me because he's mad I rejected his offer for sex dates. It's been 5 friggin' years. This is ridiculous that he's still doing this. I had to take out a restraining order because he ignored the cease and desist and got other parties to do the same. I told them all to please stop politely for years before I used the courts. I have called the police. I have asked for a welfare check to see if they can get the stalker some crisis resources instead of him bothering me. I was more than kind, kinder than this violently hateful neckbeard deserved. Particularly considering he knows I'm married and have been with my spouse for many years, and he still lied about being with me to lash out and be petty and disrespectful toward my loved ones. I told Stalker to stop, and again, he refused. Because he's obsessed with online red, black pill gurus who tell him lies about how women don't take their relationships seriously, I respect men anymore. And Stalker eats it up. He loves having degenerate wife-beaters lie to him. That's embarrassing, but more importantly, Stalker needs to keep his ideological extremism to himself. I've been put through hell by this freak, and I'm still not cheating, nor interested in cheating on my friggin' spouse. I don't know what kind of women this asshole has been hanging around, if any, but my mother's mother married early and stayed married. My parents are together and have been married for over 30 years. I was engaged and married early, and I'm staying there. So now, Stalker has gotten a slap on the wrist. He's crying victim at me, talking about my thoughts and feelings here online. Stalker isn't being doxxed. I'm not making violent threats against Stalker to physically harm Stalker. I'm not making sexual threats to rape Stalker, which is more decorum and kindness than Stalker displayed toward me. Stalker has a restraining order against him and doesn't have the ability nor right, as I'm not allowing it, to threaten, bully, and/or force me into not being honest about what I've been put through. I'm not the one in trouble. Stalker is in trouble with the courts. So this dialogue he's attempting to have with me about not liking what I have to say isn't going to fly. There are comments that, "This guy's out here crying victim because he got a restraining order? Bro, you can't harass someone for 5 years and then play the poor me card. That's Oscar-level delusion." Some viewers ask questions. Would you have shared your story online like she did or kept it private? What's your advice for dealing with a stalker like this? Drop your thoughts below. From a creepy stalker to a Disney diva, entitled Mom at Disney tried to cut ahead, claiming her kid was too sensitive to be surrounded by poor parenting. So I was at Disney with my sister and her 2 kids, 6 and 9, waiting in line for one of the character meet and greets. Long line, hot day, kids were getting antsy, but nothing wild, just normal kid stuff. There's a lot of parents there doing the same thing, trying to keep their kids entertained while inching forward every 5 minutes. Suddenly, this woman walks past everyone in line, dragging her kid along, and just plants herself like 3 families ahead of us. Not subtle. People start mumbling, and someone politely taps her shoulder like, "Hey, the line's back there." She turns around, in full Karen mode, and goes, "My son has sensory issues, and I'm not going to subject him to this environment. You all clearly don't know how to parent." Like what? She literally gestures back at the rest of us like we're feral animals. Says something like, "He's too sensitive to be surrounded by poor parenting. I'm doing what's best for my child." One dad near us just goes, "Ma'am, we all paid the same money. Your kid doesn't get VIP access because you don't like other people's toddlers." She scoffs and tries to play the victim, muttering to her kid loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's okay, sweetie. Some people just weren't raised right." Eventually, a cast member gets called over, and after some very animated whispering, she gets walked all the way to the back of the line. People actually cheered. No joke. Hope her kid's sensitive ears are okay after hearing applause for his mom getting called out. There are comments that this Karen thought her kid's sensory issues were a fast pass to the front. The whole line cheering her walk of shame. That's Disney magic. Some viewers asked questions. Would you have called her out like the dad did or stayed quiet? Have you ever dealt with a line cutter like this? Share your stories below. From a Disney disaster to a bus battle. Today was one of those days that just test your patience. After a long, exhausting day with my wife and kid in his stroller, I just wanted to get home. I was already running on low energy, but of course life had to throw a little extra at us. The first bus arrives, but nope, we can't get on because the stroller spots are taken. So now we're stuck waiting another half hour, the kid starting to squirm, and my desire to just be home growing with every passing minute. Finally, the next bus comes along. It's fairly crowded, but I only see one stroller, so I ask the driver if we can get on. He says there's a spot available. Relief. We step inside. Only coupling runs straight into her. A woman in her 50s, comfortably seated on the foldable bench in the designated area, the kind of seat that's only meant to be used when the bus isn't full. Around her, shopping bags stacked up like furniture, taking over the space. I move in with the stroller, expecting some kind of reaction. Nothing. Okay, fair enough. Sometimes people get distracted and need a little nudge, so I do the obvious. Point out that this is the reserved area, and we need to park the stroller properly. And that's when the fun begins. At first, she ignores me, not even an acknowledgement. Then when I directly address her, she acts annoyed, shuffles some of her bags around but barely makes space. The gap she leaves is barely enough to shove the stroller in, definitely not in the safe position it needs to be in case of a sudden stop. Now I'm tired. I already had to let the last bus go. I don't have the patience for this. I keep it polite, but I make it clear. She has to move. Probably came out a bit sharper than I intended, but honestly, I wasn't in the mood for diplomacy anymore. She resists, complains, talks about how she has her groceries, how the bus is already packed, how I should just deal with the space she generously left. I push back. We go back and forth until finally, the driver steps in. He announces, loudly enough for the whole bus to hear, that if the stroller isn't positioned correctly, he can't drive, and that she either moves or gets off. That changes everything. Suddenly, I'm no longer just some stroller guy annoying her. Now she's the reason the bus isn't moving and the whole crowd is watching. With dramatic frustration, she snatches up her bags, squeezes herself into whatever space she can find, and, of course, starts mumbling about how unfair this all is. Loud enough for everyone to hear, hoping for sympathy. But no one bites. In fact, what she got were nasty looks, which eventually shut her up. In the meanwhile, we settled the stroller properly, exhausted but ignoring her completely. Thankfully, our kid stayed calm almost through the whole thing. The last 5 minutes he started being noisy, but luckily we managed to half-handle the situation until we finally reached our stop. There are comments that this lady turned a stroller spot into her personal grocery fort, mumbling for sympathy while the whole bus glares. That's a public transit L. Some viewers asked questions. Would you have pushed back like he did or tried to squeeze the stroller in? Have you ever had a bus or train showdown like this? Share below. From a bus brawl to a classroom nightmare. I have been wanting to talk about this for a while but kept forgetting. This happened to me in elementary school and worsened when she became my teacher. Let's call her Ms. G. Before I had her as my teacher, she was my sister's teacher. She kept one of my sisters from going to music class and told her that she didn't need it. There was one time when me and my mom were walking home where she came up and told my mom that I wasn't doing my homework. My school has students sit on benches outside during recess. She once told me while I was at the benches, which also had board games and I was able to go to recess at the time, that I shouldn't be playing. It got worse when she became my 6th grade, last year of elementary where I am, teacher. I always zoned out and had problems paying attention, and she told me that it's not like I can go to a special class. She would sometimes go to other kids, not just me, parents, and tell them that their kid wasn't doing any homework. My mom had to go the moment she dropped me off just to avoid her. Ms. G even told us that when we graduate, we should be thanking her, in the most entitled tone. She would yell at students for not acknowledging her when they walk into class. One time me and some of my classmates almost made it to the door, but she closed it. The bell rung 10 minutes later and we were waiting for almost half an hour and knocking on the door. She finally opened, but got mad and told us that we should have been there on time, even though she closed it before we could, and had us go get tardy slips. Me and my mom even learned that some parents and students even made complaints about her. The most craziest part is that whenever there was a parent-teacher night or any events like that, she would go up to my dad, then my brother as well, he was in middle school, then high school at the time, and sometimes ignore my mom and sisters even before I was in her class. I sometimes wonder if what she did affected me because I remember the year I graduated elementary, 2018, was the last year I was sweet and innocent, or normal as I call it. But now that I have moved twice and am now graduating, I think back and am glad that I won't have to. She basically ruined the last year of what was the best kind of school era I experienced, and almost ruined school for me. Sometimes I wish I could go to my old school and confront her about how she treated me and my sisters just so she knows the effect her actions had on me. There are comments that Ms. G acting like she's the queen of 6th grade, demanding thank yous, locking kids out for her own power trip. That's not a teacher, that's a dictator. There are comments that, would you confront Ms. G like she wants to or let it go? Have you ever had a teacher who made school miserable? Share your stories below, from a toxic teacher to a ranch roadblock. I live on a fairly large 4,800 acres ranch in Montana. I'm not a rancher and I don't pretend to be, but I inherited the ranch and lease most of the land out to people who know what they're doing. Now, when I took possession of the property, I had the boundaries reviewed and marked by a surveyor, and with my trusty ATV, I verified that the fence was intact all around my property and was marked no trespassing according to the law. Met my neighbors, tried to live quietly in the beauty I had. One day, coming back from town, I found 3 cars blocking my driveway. My driveway is a private graded gravel road about 1¼ miles long from my fenced marked gate on the public access road. Nobody around, and because of the way the road was built with drainage ditches on either side, no way to drive around them, and no way to drive past them. But I was about 3/4 of a mile from my house. I climbed up on my truck to see if I could see anyone around. No joy. Now I considered just chaining onto the vehicles and towing them with my truck, at least until I can get by. But I figured I better get some witnesses. So I called it into the sheriff's office. Fortunately, the deputy on duty on my side of the county was fairly close by, so he swung by in a half hour or so. "Hey, Doc," he said, "I'm an emergency physician in the local hospital and know most all of the emergency responders. Bob, how's Charlie, his teenage daughter, who I had seen a few months earlier in the emergency department, doing?" "She's back to normal, thanks," he said. "What's up?" I pointed to the vehicles. "I came back from town and found these cars parked here. I don't know who they are, can't get past them, and can't see anyone around here. I'd like to get past them, to get to my house. Well, I can ticket them and order them towed, but the nearest tow truck is probably 2 hours away. Why not just tow them yourself?" That's what I was thinking of doing, but I wanted a witness. "Okay, Doc, let me give you a hand." So we took some picture of all of it and towed the cars out of the way, which caused some damage to the road surface. Gravel, right? The damage is what really annoyed me. I had just paid the bill to have the road graded and more gravel added, something that has to be done every year or so on such roads. But I was able to get by, which was the important thing. The next morning, the cars were still there, and the next morning, so the cars had been there 3 days now, they were still there. I'd had enough. I drove out to the cars with some wooden cribbing and a high-lift jack, and jacked the cars up, put cribbing down, and left the cars there, wheels up in the air. It took 2 more days before anyone showed up. 8 people showed up, angry because their cars had been essentially booted. They really didn't like it when I told them they owed me for parking and damage done to the road because they blocked it. "You know this is a private road, right?" I asked. "We didn't know." You had to pass a closed gate with signs to get onto this road. Then you blocked the road because you were too stupid to park like an adult? Blocked emergency access to my home? I should have had your cars towed, which the sheriff told me I could do. They started threatening me, saying they'd call the police. Go for it. Turns out they were backpacking, and their phones had all died, so they wanted me to call the police. Fair enough. The deputy, Bob again, showed up, and since he already knew the situation, their claims didn't get far. This time I had Bob trespass them and escort them off my property. They can wait for the tow truck on the public road, I said. Also, Bob, I'd like to have their names, addresses, license numbers, and vehicle registration noted in your report for my lawsuit. No problem, Doc. He took them to the public road, 3 trips. Called a tow truck, which took 4 hours to arrive. $500 fee per vehicle to lower them, I got the cribbing back, and tow them off my property to the public road. They were still trespassed. About a month later, I received notice they were suing me. Fair enough, I counterclaimed them. In the local court, they were from Denver, which is a drive away. My lawyer laughed at their claims. So did the judge, and they were very unhappy when he ordered them to pay for resurfacing the road again, plus storage and punitives. They threatened to appeal. My lawyer explained they were welcome to do so, but the appeal would still be in Montana, in the state Supreme Court. Montana doesn't have an intermediate appellate court. In Helena. In likely 3 years before it's scheduled, plus legal fees on their end. And their odds of losing were pretty high. Plus, we'd be including more legal charges, plus charges for their camping on my land, damages, etc. I found at least one campsite where they left trash around, including an envelope with their name on it. It took a year, but I got the payment from the 3rd hiker last week. I decided that the money will go to help pay for my annual summer barbecue for the county's emergency responders. 2 days of smoked brisket and the trimmings, games for the kids, swimming in my pool or my stream, and whatever. I do this every year since it's a small town. Small town living? So much better than the big city I originally came from. There are comments that these hikers thought they could park on a private ranch like it's a Walmart lot. Jacking their cars up and charging them for camping, that's Montana justice. There are comments that, would you have jacked up their cars like he did or just towed them right away? Have you ever dealt with trespassers like this? Share below. From a ranch roadblock to another stroller showdown. Today was one of those days that just test your patience. After a long, exhausting day with my wife and kid in his stroller, I just wanted to get home. I was already running on low energy, but of course life had to throw a little extra at us. The first bus arrives, but nope. We can't get on because the stroller spots are taken. So now we're stuck waiting another half hour, the kid starting to squirm, and my desire to just be home growing with every passing minute. Finally, the next bus comes along. It's fairly crowded, but I only see one stroller, so I ask the driver if we can get on. He says there's a spot available. Relief. We step inside, only to run straight into her, a woman in her 50s, comfortably seated on the foldable bench in the designated area, the kind of seat that's only meant to be used when the bus isn't full. Around her, shopping bags stacked up like furniture, taking over the space. I move in with the stroller, expecting some kind of reaction. Nothing. Okay, fair enough. Sometimes people get distracted and need a little nudge. So I do the obvious. Point out that this is the reserved area and we need to park the stroller properly. And that's when the fun begins. At first, she ignores me. Not even an acknowledgement. Then when I directly address her, she acts annoyed, shuffles some of her bags around but barely makes space. The gap she leaves is barely enough to shove the stroller in. Definitely not in the safe position it needs to be in case of a sudden stop. Now I'm tired. I already had to let the last bus go. I don't have the patience for this. I keep it polite, but I make it clear. She has to move. Probably came out a bit sharper than I intended, but honestly I wasn't in the mood for diplomacy anymore. She resists. Complains. Talks about how she has her groceries, how the bus is already packed, how I should just deal with the space she generously left. I push back. We go back and forth until finally the driver steps in. He announces, loudly enough for the whole bus to hear, that if the stroller isn't positioned correctly, he can't drive, and that she either moves or gets off. That changes everything. Suddenly I'm no longer just some stroller guy annoying her. Now, she's the reason the bus isn't moving, and the whole crowd is watching. With dramatic frustration, she snatches up her bags, squeezes herself into whatever space she can find, and, of course, starts mumbling about how unfair this all is, loud enough for everyone to hear, hoping for sympathy. But no one bites. In fact, what she got were nasty looks, which eventually shut her up. In the meanwhile, we settled the stroller properly, exhausted, but ignoring her completely. Thankfully, our kid stayed calm almost through the whole thing. The last 5 minutes he started being noisy, but luckily we managed to half-handle the situation until we finally reached our stop. There are comments that déjà vu. Another day, another Karen hogging the stroller spot with her grocery empire. The bus driver shutting it down? That's the hero we need. Some viewers asked questions. Would you have snapped at her like he did or stayed calm? Have you ever had to fight for a reserved spot like this? Share your transit tales below. From stalkers throwing tantrums to Karens hogging bus seats, these Reddit stories were wild. Who is the most unhinged in these tales? You decide. Drop your own crazy Reddit stories in the comments. I'm hooked. If you love this chaos, hit that like button, subscribe to Blow Up, and ring the bell for more Reddit insanity. Thanks for watching. See you next time.